Did you like how they piped in noise when Dominic was out there? Nothing.
Vince is mad at me about something. I think it might be that, but I'm going to go tomorrow. And the funniest thing is, like, I'm going to tell Vince.
The thing about Vince is, this is a problem we had heat, right? Or that we didn't talk to each other that much. It's not really heat. Is that he's very sensitive, bro. You know what I'm saying? If you criticize him or you say
I talked
really
about it all the time.
sensitive.
Like not just that. He could be hypercritical of WWE, and like he's the last guy. Like his standards for giving, and it's just all based on the fact that they don't want to. I mean, I can see where he's coming from.
His standards are. Say that again, Di. His standards are what? Because you cut out.
His standards for criticism are very, very. Or standards for criticism are very low.
Mm-hmm. And let me say this so it doesn't. Let me say this so it doesn't get misinterpreted. I love Vince, and I always did when we were in WCW. We were happy that he was coming in. Remember, Di? We were happy that he was coming because we saw the work he was doing in Raw, and we were like, "Come here and do something cool." And he actually started something cool with us because the first time we worked with them, him and Eddie Bear Ferrara, we ended up putting Ric Flair in the desert. Remember?
Right. How often did we? No, I wasn't part of that. Like how often was it?
Eddie Guerrero.
Okay.
Well, perfect example. The way they were writing TV. How often was it? It was like never that we had like a vignette in the back. Like he started writing TV. Like all of a sudden now, all the characters now can do some acting in the back. You know, because all we did for interviews to be in the ring, or we'd do the stuff with Mean Gene for WCW Saturday Night in that room, right? But now we had like vignettes,
and we're not bad mouthing. We're just kind of reminiscing because back then, Eric had a lot of guys that he hired that felt very loyal to him, and I've gone through the same thing in AAA when I came back. All these people that were loyal to Antonio Pena because he hired them and pushed them, right? And there were some people that were loyal to Vampiro because he pushed them. You know, so I come in and they're like, all right, who's he going to push? And if you don't push them, their excuse is, and you'll love this one, is Konnan doesn't like me. Bro, that's the furthest thing from my mind. I've always said it. We don't got to go and sing karaoke together. We don't got to go to a Korean barbecue place together. Just come, be on time, be professional, and you'll get pushed. Who gives a fuck if I like you or I don't like you? You know what I'm saying? That's my own personal problems. I got to give the fans what they want. You know what I'm saying? So anyways, getting back to Vince, I love Vince. The problem is that he gets mad because in his mind is if we're bros, you can't criticize each other. And it's like, bro, that's all we do is criticize each other. Me, Disco, Jericho, when we're around Ray, when we're, you know what I'm saying? Our little crew, we just bust each other's balls incessantly. It's part of, you know?
Right.
I think it's a shame. But it's a shame how badly history regards him, like because of guys that have buried him in like Death of WCW book and all that. Because
let me tell you, can I just say this? You're very right about that. But I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Glenn, he also dug his own hole by attacking these guys. And as you know, they're sensitive and they don't like to be criticized. So they all wrote whatever narrative that was that they wanted to bury the guy.
Once he started castrating the marks, that was it. But if you remember back in the day, Vince would go on Observer Live and Keller's show and stuff. Like he kind of had cordial relationships with everybody. But
I don't remember that.
Yeah.
Well, in his defense, and I've to the point that I've had a very adversarial relationship with the Dirt Sheet guys from back in the day because of the way they treated Vince. Which was was very unfair. Like bro, it's like they literally, because he was writing the type of television that the old school like stuff that they weren't used to, and because he kind of like got away from the basic principles of professional wrestling and kind of opened the curtain, they started writing TV where the camera's just there, so they changed away, right, and got everybody out of their comfort zone. It's like the thing that bothers me is they've gone. Like their vitriol for him got so bad that like they're just completely discounted what he did in WWE and are just trying to define his career by everything else he did, which is completely a dishonest argument. It's not fair at all.
Well, the main thing that he has going for him, and nobody can change it, stain it, or erase it, is, bro, he was writing television when the highest ratings in history, or maybe since the 50s. I don't know what their
you got to understand. You got to understand this. He took over in the middle of the 83 weeks. Like Bischoff started kicking. Right. We were kicking their ass. Okay, so this was like he was the quarterback that won in the game. The score was 35-0.
He was Purdy.
He came back and they took the lead. They won the game 41-38. You know what I'm saying? And like people are just trying to discount that period of time where it was a good 2.5 years, and just trying to say, well, you know, what did he do at WCW? It's like, well, bro, WCW is he didn't have the support of the higher ups that he did in, WWE. Like Vince basically, nobody had Vince's back when he came to WCW. Well, and nobody can argue that, you know?
Let's say that Game of Thrones, right?
Right.
Had like 8 seasons they had 8 seasons, 6 of them were so, but 2 were phenomenal, right? They'll always be known because not everything's phenomenal, bro. Those were 2-3 years, whatever it was, that were incredible.
Right. Yeah. And it's like you want to just like
the original Dexter was like that. It had like 4 seasons of greatness, and then the rest.
Right. And then all of a sudden, did this guy go on Flocka?
But the people want to bring up like the one worst season and define him for that. You know what I'm saying? Right. And my thing is, okay, well, just do that for everybody else.
And this is not in his defense. This is the truth. People are, why are you putting Vince Russo? Because it's the truth.
Right.
He didn't have the support in WCW. Had a lot of enemies there.
Right.
That he did nothing to.
Right.
But their thing was that we're Eric's boys. Eric is coming back, and you in the meantime. Basically, that was kind of the mentality.
Yeah, that's what he had to work with.
And then he went to TNA. He did not have power there, bro.
Right.
The power was Jeff. You know,
Jeff was the relationship that everybody thought that Russo had with Vince McMahon. He literally had with Jeff and TNA.
Jeff was the filter.
Jeff was the filter, but Jeff was the guy that, like, if he didn't like the idea, it wasn't going on TV. You know what I'm saying? Like, he was like, mainly Vince, and Ed Ferraris told me this, and so was Terry Taylor. There's no reason for them to collectively lie about this. They would hand the show to Vince, and Vince loved everything and would just tweak the segments. He wouldn't change anything. He wouldn't we're not doing this. Bro, Jeff wanted, like, okay, this is what I want. And then Vince, okay, now go write the show. It was never like that. Like, it was a completely different process that he had in New York. It was like, write the show, bring it to Vince McMahon. I like all this stuff, but let me put. And then Vince has even said, like, like I've told Vince in the past that, like, I've never learned anything from Vince McMahon in wrestling. Or Vince Russo. I didn't learn anything. We would just share creative ideas. He never taught me, like, he showed me how to format the show, the writing of the show, but, like, we were getting the show and looking at it so you kind of understand what is he doing. But, bro, I learned from, like, Jeff Jarrett and Dutch Mantel. Like, they had vast wrestling knowledge on formatting a match and stuff, and an angle, just like just because they had tremendous experience. He
debuted. If you remember, he debuted on a TV show.
Right. So it was like yeah. So it's like Jeff and Dutch or some. Yeah. Like Jeff and Dutch, I would gain knowledge in that room with them. Vince was just a guy pitching storyline ideas. And he was, like, good at it. He's like, he had a lot of Larry David in him. Like something would, you would tell a story where it would come back around and circle, and then you come back to the point, like, and then you get caught in that. He was a good storyteller because Vince was hooked on good storytelling television. He would watch. He'd watch a lot of TV that, like, had that, and, like, so he was writing stories like that. Jeff and Dutch were more kind of like, they were wrestling guys. They knew how to do, like the Dutch had told me one time. That he said, this is why I disagree with Dutch, but Dutch was very creative, right? But Dutch made the comment one time that he says, wrestling is just plagiarism. It's like everything's been done before. And I'd be like, not really. Like if you want to say that, then you're just pigeonholing yourself like, okay, we just have to do the things that have been done. Well, I would be the outside the box guy, and Vince was outside the box. Let's try this. It'd never been done before. So Dutch and Jeff are kind of like, I don't know if we could do that because wrestling's, we're in the lane of, like, wrestling. We need to do what's done and then worked. And, like, we would constantly try to pitch, like, let's try this. And, like, every once in a while, like, that's what I was in the room. I'd be like, I'd let those guys do most of the stuff. But I would have a good idea sometimes, right? And those guys would pop. They're good idea. Let's but then they'd be like, well, we can't do that. All right. But then I have a good idea, and it's like, okay, let's do that. And it'd be like, okay, and it worked. But I would be the guy that when they're going over the storylines and people are arguing, if I was adamant about something, they usually would just say, okay, all right, we're not doing it. Because there were things a lot of time in that room that said, bro, that's not going to work. Come on, just like something when it's just going to be or it's just like lame, and stuff like that. I'd be like, dude, this not there was one time and after this happened, I told you so about this, but they were doing a spot where Jeff was the heel and Jimmy Hart was going to go to the ring and call out Jeff, and and Jeff was going to beat him up, and I'm like, dude, please don't do this. I go, that's going to make Jimmy look like the biggest idiot on the face of planet Earth. This happens all the time. The weaker babyface calls out the bigger, and the guy gets beat up. It's like we've all seen this. It's like the guy has had to have seen this before. It's like, so don't do this. And then they did it, and it just didn't get over. And stuff like my take was being the outside the box guy. I go, Jeff, why don't you come down? And Jimmy Hart, he's not some dumb some dumb cookie. He's been in the business a while and everything. He comes down, he knows you're going, bro, he pulls out a can of mace and sprays your eyes. Before you hit him, because that's what anybody watching TV would hope Jimmy Hart would do, because they don't want Jimmy Hart to get beat up because he's a babyface. It was difficult selling to those guys, because they were because wrestling's played through. This is the way it's been done. So those were the type of arguments we would have. But generally, me, Dutch, and Jeff in that room, we all got along. Everybody probably thinks that the booking meetings and stuff it was very entertaining. Dutch is a fantastic storyteller. Mm-hmm. Jeff is a fantastic storyteller. And me, and I'm I'm just sitting here listening to two of the greatest storytellers of all time. We're booking stuff and everything right, and Vince, who is arguably people don't want to admit this in the history of professional wrestling. You look at his body of work, arguably might be the best writer in the history of professional wrestling. If you look at it, because that period of time when WWE was beating WCW and Vince took over and took it from a 1.8, that's what the rating was when Vince took over, up to 6.5s and crushing the other competition. You can't that body of work right there cannot be. You can't find a comparison, because wrestling with the Attitude Era, that little period of time, generated and spiked the business to kind of the popularity that it kind of still exists today, So it's so you could argue Vince, even though the dirt sheet guys want to argue he might be the worst, I look at the data and say bro, there's a lot of evidence pointing to he was the best. And it's we could argue that, but you can't discount the argument, because then you would have to look at the attitude and say, well, that doesn't matter. It's well, how does that not matter? It's we were popping here. Brother, their show was so good that we would be at our show, and me and Konnan and Jared, we'd be over at the TV watching the other show while our show was going on. That's how good this stuff was. And we can't, I'm not going to pretend that didn't happen. It happened, right, Konnan? I mean, yeah, so.
And they would tell us, what the f*** you doing watching that show?
Right,
it's
so.
entertaining.
Right, so given that, it's not difficult to see how Vince kind of has this very sour attitude at this stage in his career. Where literally the only people that are giving him credit like that are guys like me, who were kind of so it's I can see the frustration on him, and I can see why his mind has been pigeonholed into this thing as okay, nothing in WWE is good, when a lot of stuff has been good, but Vince is going to be the last guy you can admit that to, because
I think, like I said before, his problem is he got into a fight with these guys,
right?
And they're never going to give him a fair shot.
And it's the longest fight in the history of the world. Yeah. Neither of them are ever going to quit the fight. They're always, and it's dude, it's at some point you just got to try to be a fan again, because you can tell he's just lost his passion as a fan. And that's what we see today. So
what buried Vince years ago, before he really started to turn against these guys, was two things. One, and this is from the Smart Mark fan perspective and stuff, he killed the cruiserweight division in WCW, and he put the title on Ferrara's Oklahoma. People hated that. And then David Arquette is champion. No one's ever going to forgive him for that either. That was the beginning of everyone
that happened
hating
25
him.
years ago, Joe.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
I'm saying that was the beginning.
How long do you hold the grudge for?
Right.
Well, later down the line, when you start doing castrating the marks and stuff, was when it got worse. But I think that's
what I think. I think that his, telling him to go themselves and whatever he did, right? You know,
you're not going to get positive. It's like another guy we know.
Right. If you're not
going to get positive press if you're constantly attacking the people that would post good things about you. You know, like it's not going to happen. You know, so.